I did take notice, Thor, that you do get pulled on a lot of podcasts this time of year, and this is maybe the tail end of it. But so when a podcast reminder pops up in your schedule, is it a big pain in the ass to you? I'm just curious. I mean, you got to be dreading this kind of stuff.
Oh no, not at all. No, because it's like you study for a test for 2 months, 3 months, but really for me multiple years because I cover those guys in college. So the fact that I get to talk about it, like it's just my takes on it. So I don't mind it at all.
All right. That's fair because, so I have to admit, maybe I'm projecting a little bit. I love talking about football and doing podcasts, but sometimes when I put one in my calendar and I'm so grateful anyone that even asked me to come on, but I'm like, got to, bake that into the schedule. So it may be a little self-projection here. So no big deal.
No, not at all. I'm pumped.
You're polite. Okay. So Thor Nystrom, Fantasy Pros. This is what I want to ask you. You've gathered all this rookie knowledge. I mean, I hear you. I use you as a resource for my own stuff. So, and I'm sure a lot of other people do as well. But do you play in a lot of, do you put this to like work here? Do you play in a lot of dynasty leagues? Just a couple? How crazy are you? How many leagues?
I should definitely play in more. I used to play in like 3 dynasty leagues, but I had to quit because in the fall I'm so deep with college, and I do the college fantasy leagues. I'm betting on everything, the props and the sides and the totals. And I just get so into that world that I found I wasn't doing my NFL lineups. Yep. I missed it over and over again. I would build really good rosters, people that from last year know that I was stumping for Puka Nacua, Tank Dell, Sam Laporta, in dynasty drafts, like in the off season, you can get really good values on guys like that. But yeah, I wasn't doing the lineups enough, so I had to cut down.
Yeah, no, well, first of all, I commend you on that. That's actually responsible, right? I mean, maybe here and there you could jump into like a dynasty best ball, and as much as convenient as it is, it does take it takes something away from the experience. And again, I hate setting lineups, but you become a little disengaged, similar to like regular seasonal best ball. You do the draft, and then like the next time I look at it is like week 8.
1,000%. Yeah, best balls I could definitely do more of, and I should do more of best ball. Just so I can draft and then forget it. But this year I'm gonna try to do a couple more again. Because with the Fantasy Pros tools, you can set it where they'll automatically do your lineups for you. So
yes.
So I think I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, another thing that I think would be helpful for a lot of people is not only like a tool that gets developed. I'm talking to our guys at RotoWire about it too, is not only like do your lineups for you, but like put the Thursday players, like let's say Baltimore's playing on a Thursday. Derrick Henry should go in the RB slot, not the flex spot where I might have had him, and then just front load everything because then I have to go in Thursday. I have to go in Saturday night for the injuries. It just gets crazy. So let's get to the main topic at hand here. I mean, I titled this podcast Rookie Sleepers, and look, there's really no sleeper. Thanks to guys like you and a lot of other people doing deep fantasy content, everybody knows who freaking Ryan Flownery is at this point, right? I mean, that's if you would have put him in a lineup 6 months ago, I wouldn't have known who it was. So I want to talk about sleepers in a sense where guys that we're not even expecting, like almost Justin Herbert's rookie year was going at like pick 9 in Superflex, and not a sleeper, but someone who shocked. So let's start with someone that I've heard you talk a lot about, JJ McCarthy. A common narrative is that, hey, look, he's going to be fine, but he will never be a top 12 quarterback. I want to give you a chance to talk about why he might be a, quote, sleeper, but just debunk I want to hear the upside case for someone like McCarthy.
Well, both his floor is way higher than people think, and his ceiling is also way higher than people think. And I don't understand. Throughout the process, I argue with people, and that narrative too. I don't understand it. What tools are people not seeing when they try to say his ceiling would be like the 12th or the 13th best quarterback in the league?
Right.
What are they missing? He has a bazooka for an arm. He finished 1 mile per hour underneath the NFL combine record for max velocity. He's an incredible athlete. He finished with the 6th best 3-cone at the NFL combine, irregardless of position, after weighing in 17 pounds heavier than his Michigan bio. The last known 40 that he ran was the off season before the last season at Michigan. He ran a 4.48. So he probably would have been in the mid 4.5s to the high mid 4.4s to the high 4.4s if he had run the 40. And then you watch his film, it's peppered with NFL concepts. He was in the 12 personnel offense, obviously, for Jim Harbaugh, sitting NFL head coach, where they won a national title last year. It's all stuff attacking over the middle. He was the best quarterback by the numbers at that last year. And the statistical stuff with the dopes the dopey box score stats that I encounter on Twitter all the time don't seem to understand is Michigan, yes, would run on the early downs, which meant that J.J. McCarthy did not get the empty calorie stats that, say, a Bo Nix did with all the screen passes to the outside on first down. Coaches and evaluators don't care about that sort of stuff. Or even some of the other quarterbacks, their usage was heavily leaning one specific way that may or may not be translatable. They're going to have to learn other stuff. Jaden Daniels, for instance, it was a lot of downtown stuff, not as much stuff over the middle, 10 to 19 yards down the field between the hashes where McCarthy dominated. McCarthy played by far the hardest strength of schedule of those top 6 quarterbacks last year. It was in the 30s. Bo Nix, for example, they played the aggregate 80th defensive strength last year. And when J.J. McCarthy threw, it was on invariably second and long and or third down scenarios against the best of the best with one of the worst receiving cores of any of those top 6 guys as well. He didn't have Rome Odunze. He didn't have Jalen Polk. He didn't have Jalen McMillan. He didn't have Malik Neighbors. He did not have Brian Thomas. He did not have, you go down the list. The next closest Michigan offensive player that got drafted in this draft, it was in the late third round, Roman Wilson.
Oh, it was Roman Wilson. I was thinking Corum, but he went after Roman Wilson, right?
Yeah, those two, in the third round, whatever. Right. There was no other first round or second round. People need to understand it was their defense that was really good. And they Michigan couldn't constitute their offense like they did unless they were dominant on third downs. The only reason they were dominant on third downs was because of J.J. McCarthy. Right. His game is going to translate very smoothly. And with the supporting cast, you talk about fantasy, he has the best supporting cast of the guys that he is walking into as well, with an offensive leaning coach who's one of the better play callers we have. So the ceiling is very, very high with him. Last thing I'll say on this, Alan, for every single guy, I only put out one comp, but for most guys, I'll have like a range. Yes, the Bonanza comp, the middle tier comp, and then sort of the low end comp. And I put out what I feel was his middle tier one, which was Apex Rich Gannon. But the Bonanza comp for him, I think it's John Elway. If everything hits with McCarthy, that's what it looks like. And the low tier one, I don't see him having a worse career than Jake Plummer. To me, that is the on the very bottom of the shelf of the outcomes for JJ McCarthy. So that's
So he's a sleeper. He is, what? I got him yesterday. Sure. Yeah. And again, everyone knows who he is. He was one of the most talked about. I think he was for the last month of draft season, he was the one we were talking about, but a sleeper in a sense where someone in a rookie draft, I just got him at 109. Now, that's the latest I've ever seen him go, but I was trying to trade up, and then nobody would. And then he falls to me. So seems very Justin Herbert-esque from his year as far as, not having a lot of expectations. I mean, if he has Alex Smith's best years, that's a good career too, right there. I mean, it sounds like you're aiming higher than that.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, he is way more physically gifted than Alex Smith. It's not even close. The arm's way better. He's also a better athlete. So,
I'm loving this, man. I'm loving that. So, yeah, that's I like hearing the bull case because it started off in rookie season, Thor, where he was going like right after Jaden Daniels, pick 5, and then Drake May was the guy that falling. Now it seems to switch a little bit. So, you think it's fear that Sam Darnold is going to start the year? I mean, do you have a prediction on that? Do you think that there's any way they start Sam Darnold week 1, the Vikings?
For sure, there's a chance. And in fact, right now, it would probably be the favorite outcome, just starting at the beginning of the season. I don't know that I'll put it this way. What they're going to do with JJ at the beginning of the season, I think has less to do with how head-to-head competition between him and Darnold and more a gauging of what they feel would be better for his development, JJ's development. And, so here's my prediction. I think JJ could start week 1. Because if he goes in there in camp and he's clearly better than Darnold, and then the staff is like, it's not going to hurt his development for him to play. That's where I think you see him early. But we got to keep in mind, Darnold is good buddies with the quarterback coach, Josh McCown. They played together on the Jets.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I feel like, that was a part of the pitch to Darnold is at least early on, you'll play, or we're hoping
things
that you'll
change.
play, whatever. Yeah, like things do change for sure.
Things change, yeah.
Things change for sure. But if I had to predict right now, I think the timeline for JJ getting into the lineup, they basically line it up with when TJ Hawkinson comes back, right? Hawkinson's supposed to miss the first month or first 6 games.
I think Thanksgiving is a safer, like Hawkinson is ready to, I mean, that was a late season injury, man. But let's just say it's Halloween for argument's sake.
Yeah.
Week 6, week 5, right? I mean, I think week 8. I mean, because there was reports that Hawkinson didn't even have the surgery until a month after the injury as well, for whatever reason, swelling, inflammation, all that kind of interesting stuff. So if you were trying to rank your wide receivers, now I had moved in the RotoWire ranks, I'd moved Jamar Chase above Justin Jefferson just because of quarterback certainty. You don't seem to share that. Like if you have Justin Jefferson ahead of Chase, McCarthy, Darnold is not a reason to move him down one slot, is it?
No. I think that they're going to be fine there. And he's obviously going to get peppered with targets, especially early in the season when Hawkinson's not there, right? Like they have a 12 personnel offense. I don't think that they're going to switch out of that for the beginning of the season because you have this rookie quarterback, right? Like, why would you go to predominant 3 wide receiver set when that's not your base offense and then you're going to change it on the fly? I don't think they're going to do that. So on the field at all times, you're going to have Josh Oliver, who's a great blocker, receiving, okay.
Tunyon.
And then someone like that.
He's
right?
somebody. He's somebody. He can catch passes, right? He had a big touchdown season with Aaron Rodgers.
He's somebody, but you're going to do it out of desperation, more or less.
Right.
I mean, Tunyon, how long was he out there as a free agent? No one was signing him. So, but yeah, I mean, you have to. If not him, it would be Johnny Munt or Nick Muse or Trey Knox.
Going deep,
I mean,
baby.
Yeah. So that's what it is. And then you have Jefferson and Addison. Like those guys are going to get annihilated with targets early on in the season. They're just going to pepper them.
Yeah, you brought up Roman Wilson, and again, these aren't names that are traditional sleepers. The word sleeper, when we started playing fantasy football, and in the 20 years ago, meant like you didn't even know who the third receiver was on like a team unless you proactively went and looked it up. But Roman Wilson, you just brought him up, is good landing spot, I guess, right? I mean, so. What are Roman Wilson's chances to outperform? He goes around the late second, early third in these super flex rookie drafts. Give me the upside case a little bit for those that are. It's a boring pick. I'll admit that when I take it, but is it a solid pick?
You actually were right. Corum went one spot ahead of Roman Wilson.
I didn't know. I guessed. I guessed.
And then funny enough, Zach Zinter went one after Roman Wilson. So it's 3 straight Michigan guys.
Michigan row right there. So all right, cool. And by the way, I can't take any credit. I was just throwing names out. So all right. All right, Roman Wilson.
Yeah, Roman Wilson, great landing spot. A team that needed wide receivers pretty desperately. Roman Wilson going to go on. He's going to start right away. Now he's confined to the slot. He's a smaller guy. I mean that's what it's going to be in the NFL. So that somewhat limited the upside. That's why he ended up falling where he did. I had him way higher on my board. I think I had him 44th overall, like something like that. I'm a big fan of Roman Wilson's game. The athleticism, for sure, getting off the line, the way that he moves. And then the thing I'd say for the next level, people talk about his size, and, that's fair enough. Again, on the smaller side, he's a shade under 5'11", 185. But he has one sort of genetic quirk that is decidedly in his favor that no one talks about, which is he has enormous hands. Like they were
over 10. Was here. You know what? I have while you're talking through it, I will pull up Roman Wilson's hand size, please don't check my browser history, anybody, but go ahead. So the Roman Wilson's enormous hand. So what, okay. Is it on, I'm on Player Profilers that, let's see if they have it. But go ahead. So as you're 5'11", 185, go ahead.
Yeah. So he had, he only had 1 drop, 0 fumbles last year. The year before, 2 drops, 0 fumbles. And with the hands thing, Roman Wilson's hands, get this, they are bigger than Roman Dunze's. They are 1/8 of an inch smaller than Marvin Harrison's, and they are the same size as Xavier Legette's. 3 big alpha boundary X type fellas.
9 and 3/8, right? That's what you came up with. 9 and 3/8 was the hand size for Wilson. Yeah. Man, I'm looking at mine. I think mine are 4 inches, 5 inches. They're very small hands. Very small hands. Now, that it's funny because obviously the hand size thing came into like the mainstream discussion with Kenny Pickett last year. So it matters for wide receivers, obviously, as well. Is that one of the key metrics, or is that just like part of the formula? Like if someone has unusually large hands, I mean, how does that translate for us into to fantasy? Is it more like completions, like you said, lack of fumbles, those type of things?
Yeah, where it becomes notable for me is if a guy like that, like Roman Wilson, who got the amount of targets that he did over the last couple of seasons and had what was it, 3 drops over the last 2 years combined with 0 fumbles. It already projects as a guy with good hands. And then you see how enormous his hands are. To me, that projecting it going forward, it's pretty safe to say that guy has really, really good hands. And there's something that actually explains it, like a piece of data outside of just hand-eye coordination or something that you can't test for, you can't quantify.
Yeah. I want to just, before we go on here, I could listen to you talk about this stuff all day. I love when people are passionate about something and talk about it. It really is like so cool. I could hear if somebody was passionate about like just reading the phone book, I could listen to it. So no, it's really cool. How did you get into loving college football? Because I love the NFL. I watch everything, just like all the other fantasy fans watching this. But I can't get into college football until like the end. Maybe it's because I grew up in New York City, like where there's not a lot of college teams to root for. But I'm down here in Florida now, and I've tried. But these games are like 50-2, or 50-4. So tell me what it is about college football. I guess that you're pitching and how you became so passionate about it.
Yeah, it hooked me as a kid through the NCAA football game on PlayStation. Yeah, me and a buddy just played it all the time. And then by the time we got to high school, we were even before then. But
what team did you use? What team did you use all the time?
All of them, really.
Okay.
I mean, like, because we do so many dynos, and then we could do it once we got onto the PS3, we could play online. So I broke 3 different PS3s over the last decade. I broke 4 different discs of NCAA 14 because that was the only game we could play, until about a month and a half from now when they release a new one for the first time in 11, 12 years. Yeah. But, just playing it over and over again. So to answer your question, I predominantly go with the lower tier teams, but we have had some dynos where we'll allow people to pick anyone, but I prefer building the programs up. But like, thinking about the sport from that sort of angle, like as a kid, like roster building, roster construction, the recruiting element of it. Like, again, that's how I first got into it, playing dynos with my buddies at like sleepovers all night, simming through like 3 seasons. And then, from there, obviously I got really interested in college football. I went to a Power 5 school for undergrad, Kansas. And then I got even more jacked about it. That was during the Mark Mangino era, where Mark Mangino brought Kansas to eventually winning an Orange Bowl by my senior year, but they sort of built that up in front of my eyes. And then I got to go to Iowa for graduate school, and they have a tremendous football program as well and tradition. So yeah, it's been a long time in terms of that, but it was the video game first. Then it was, starting to watch it on TV as a kid, and then, getting hooked that way, and just more and more throughout the years.
So, it's funny you say that. Now we're getting a little psychological here, and I love this kind of stuff. So I think that's where my love of the NFL came as well. I used to play Tecmo Bowl back in the day.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that was one of the first games that actually collected stats. Now,
yes.
if you turn the damn machine off, it would erase it unless you like made sure that it was like double and triple saved. I used to leave it on. And then also, I mean, listen, we're dudes. We read on the toilet, right? Where we look at our phones on the toilet. I used to read the Sports Almanac and look at the stats on the bowl. And every year I would get the new Sports Illustrated Sports Almanac. So sorry for the visual there, Thor. I know that, during draft season, everybody rightfully so wants to talk about the top 12 guys. So I want to I've been fascinated by like these receivers that are like round 3 receivers and later. And there's like that whole tier that starts with Roman Wilson. And I'll call them sleepers because, these are more or less no names, but they're dart throws. Malachi Corley and Burton. Okay. So these two guys, we'll start with Burton. Now, the narrative on him is that he could have been a first round guy, but drops to the round, to the later rounds because of, an attitude thing. Is that what you're seeing as well? Does he have that upside to be this year's Tank Dell or Puka Nacua type? Sorry for
the upside. Yeah, the upside's there for sure. I ended up dropping him a little down my pre-draft. Well, more than a little. I think he finished 17th amongst my receivers when I think earlier in the process, I had him as high as 9th at one point. It's like fluid as you go through, you're watching more. And in this case, it wasn't about something that I was watching. It was about what I started to hear.
You have to bake that in. You have to be. What's the rub with him? What are people, what's the narrative that he's a pain in the ass? I mean, what is it?
Big time pain in the ass. Yes.
Okay. All right.
I think he's cycled through multiple high schools in his career. Then Georgia was not sad at all when he left. In fact, Kirby Smart's boot might have been, kicking him in the back out the door. And then Jermain Burton, what I did love was that he went to Alabama because then he's like, screw you, like I'll beat you guys. And they actually did. They beat him in the SEC title game. Yeah. I love Jermain Burton's talent level. It's just the things that I've heard about him in the locker room or his work ethic, stuff like that. That's what made it boom or bust. Cincinnati's entire draft was boom or bust. Right. They were swinging from the heels the whole time. If it goes one way, they could have one of the better draft classes in the entire league from this past process. If it goes the other way, they could get very little value out of it. And Burton is a great example of this. There was the incident a couple years ago when he took the swipe at the Tennessee fans that were storming onto the field, 2 different ones.
I love that stuff, though. That's what I want. I want a guy that's punching fans. No, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, LeGarrette Blount did. You remember LeGarrette Blount 100 years ago?
Punched the Boise State kid. Yeah, I do remember. I was watching that game live.
And that was a player. I mean, at least of a fan running on the field, there's like justification, I mean, LeGarrette Blount was you, but go ahead. I interrupted you there with Burton. So what's the story there? That he took a swipe at a fan that was like running on the field?
It was 2 different fans. Like one of them, he I don't know if he hit a girl.
Okay. I didn't know that. That I didn't know. That's not good. Okay. All right. Sorry about that.
You could like, it wasn't really like a punch, but it was definitely like
you don't want to do that to a girl. It's obviously there's no, you're not going to, there's no justification. So I didn't know that when I said it to you. So when I said, I like players like that, I didn't know that but anyway, even if he shoulder hit her, right? You don't even want to.
No. And it's just, it's a composure thing. It's a maturity thing.
The maturity.
Yeah. And that's like, if Jermain Burton has his head screwed on straight, he's going to be a top 10 receiver coming out of this class for sure. And he's obviously in a really good situation there with the passing environment that the Bengals have, but it's going to go one way or the other. And the only person that's going to determine that is Jermain Burton, because he has plenty of ability. It's just the head stuff with him.
Yeah, and I think people mature, right? Like if I look back to, when I was in my teens and early 20s, man, I did some stuff that I would not even be proud to tell people, right? Between, just mischievous stuff that we do. I mean, and you never know how someone grew up or, what their life experiences were. And so I do believe that, is there ever been I'm trying to think of a quote knucklehead case in the NFL that when young and then grew out of it and became an excellent player? Is there anyone that you can think of off the top of your head?
Yeah, one recent one was Micah Parsons. Parsons had a a couple incidents in college where he had the red flag for character on multiple boards. But the big incident, there was a hazing thing at Penn State that James Franklin may or may not have covered up, but some of the stuff came out anyway. And Parsons, in those anecdotes, did not acquit himself well. We'll put it that way. So,
right.
Early on in his career at Penn State, especially, there was issues there, maturity issues. You could even say being a bully issues, like characteristics of a person that maybe you would not want to, front your organization. So there was questions about that when he went into the NFL. Obviously, it has been much different in the NFL. Now he's a team leader. That part of him he left behind in Happy Valley.
Yeah. How many times have you heard this one? Our friend Clipboard Jesus says, "Thank God there was no social media when I was young." I mean, how many times have you said that in your life, right?
For sure. Yeah. Yep. I mean,
well, you're a young guy, so maybe there was there social media when you were in middle school?
No, no. The internet got invented when I was in, I think, 4th grade or something.
How old are you? Do you give your age?
39.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You look good, man. I thought you were going to say 33, 34.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. What's it called? Good stuff right there. All right, let's talk about Malachi Corley. I'm a Jets fan, so not only am I interested because of fantasy, but Jets fan. Now, we'll talk about the profile, which your comps for him, all that kind of stuff. But then I also want you to work in the narrative a little bit about Aaron Rodgers. Yes, he's been praising him, but I don't remember Aaron Rodgers targeting a rookie significantly where it's going to make a fantasy difference. But let's start with Corley. What's the bull case for Corley if we're taking him at that end of the second, early third round in our Superflex drafts?
I'm definitely lower on Corley. I'm not a Corley guy. And
the reason the downside case then?
We're gonna go with the downside case here, okay. and my comp will probably give it to you, but Amari Rodgers, it was my comp for him, which is funny that he ends up getting taken by the Jets. Because back in the day, Amari Rodgers, speaking of a receiver that Rodgers did not want to target, especially early on, they're very similar in that at Clemson, Amari Rodgers, he got all of his production on spoon-fed targets near the line of scrimmage. Basically acted as an extension of the running game. That was Malachi Corley. He's not a receiver yet.
Right.
At Western Kentucky, he was basically used as the running back. It's just that he was deployed out of the slot. So it was, the stats on this, he only caught 15 balls, 20 plus yards downfield. In college, he had 23.5% contested catch rate last year.
What's a normal contested rate that would make it a prospect that you're interested in? What's a number we should be looking for?
Well, it's all contextual, right? The thing that's concerning about Corley's is that he only had a 5.5 ADOT on that. And so it's all this stuff close to the line of scrimmage. And whenever he was in those, I'd want it closer to 50-50, right? The classic 50-50 ball. And Corley, you could say, well, he's on the shorter side, et cetera, et cetera. But whole point being, he needs to be in space. And to this point in his career, it's been near the line of scrimmage, or he isn't going to get the ball to even unlock the thing of his broken tackle machinations that everybody loves so much. And one contextual thing about the broken tackles, I don't know if people realize this, Conference USA is now the most, can I swear on this? You said,
of course.
It is the most dog shit conference in the FBS now. Mm-hmm. It is now sunk to 9th out, now we're down to the 9 conferences. But those were the guys he was breaking tackles against.
Bad competition.
These cornerbacks and these strong safeties and sometimes even linebackers that are going to be accountants in a couple years. They're not going to be invited to the combine. They're, yada, yada. But the last 2 seasons, Corley, 89 of his catches came behind the line of scrimmage. He led the nation in screen yards both of those seasons. To me, he is a running back playing wide receiver. Can he learn how to do the receiver stuff? Maybe. But that is a total leap of faith in the same way that it was with Amari Rodgers, another guy that I argued against his entire process.
Very interesting. And by the way, what a gentleman you are. You're asking permission before you curse. I love that, because there's some guys come on here. I do have to start bleeping everything out because it's gratuitous. I mean, yours was in context. So, that's an experienced podcaster for you right there. Don't assume. All right. That was great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Thor. You are a gentleman. Talk about Corley one last time here with what's the upside if you're wrong? Is it Curtis Samuel, which is, he's been a good player, but not great for fantasy football? Is it Randall Cobb? What is the upside here?
Yeah, closer to a Samuel, because Samuel played not totally analogous systems, but analogous usage, right? Like the Urban Meyer system and the offshoot that Ohio State runs, Samuel, Paris Campbell, some of Percy Harvin was down at Florida. It's that same sort of roll out of the slot where you are getting manufactured a lot of touches close.
Gadget guy. I hate gadget guys.
Yeah. So it's like, but Samuel's gotten a lot better. And Paris Campbell, obviously, on the other end of the polarity, sometimes it works out. I think Samuel would be Samuel is sleeker, whereas Corley's more of that berserker in the open field, as far as breaking the tackles, running tough. But I think, qualitatively, you'd be looking at something like that.
All right. So you're not taking him. You're taking, I'm just trying to think of some of the other players that go in that. Anyone else? You're passing on him unless it's like the 4th round, which is never happening, right? In those drafts, that's the recommendation.
I would pass on him. The guys that I would take, I would take a decent amount of dudes ahead of him, but guys that were taken behind him, Jalen McMillan, I would take above him for sure. Luke McCaffrey, I love. You want to talk about sleepers? Yeah. Luke McCaffrey, for me, is way up there.
Here's a good teaser right here. We're going to come back and talk about Luke McCaffrey. Just got to pay a couple bills right here. So first, just want to let everybody know that the RotoWire Dynasty podcast is brought to you by Circa Las Vegas. They have a amazing fantasy football setup. So if you go to circalasvegas.com and check out, just search for their draft experience. We've done it a couple times where they pick you up in a limo from the airport. It's part of the package. You do the whole draft. They set up a beautiful board for you by the Stadium Swim. Have you ever been out to Circa, the hotel in Las Vegas?
I'm going to Stadium Swim in middle of August. Me and Von Delzell, we tied in the VSIN competition for bull picking last year. The Stadium Swim was the prize of that. So Vaughn and I, we agreed that whoever won would take the other guy as well. We get a whole cabana at that thing. I wanted to go, and I'm not just saying this because it's advertising. Yeah. I wanted to go to that Stadium Swim ever since, because buddies will send you pictures all the time when they're there, and it looks insane every single time. I can't wait to get into that cabana.
So here comes my humble brag right here. We go every year. We've gone for the last 3 years. We go in July with RotoWire trip, and they're very generous to take us out there. Everything's always tastes better when it's free, right? So
yes,
we that's our quote Christmas party. They're very generous at RotoWire with stuff like that. So yeah, everything you see in the pictures at Stadium Swim and it's even better in person. I mean, you walk in, you love sports betting. You do a ton of sports betting content. When you walk into their sports book, it's just different because everyone has that same mentality there. It's not like, we used to make the joke when only the degenerates bet on Hawaii, right? Because Hawaii's the last game of the night, and it's, you're always chasing.
The makeup game.
Right. So it's not filled with people betting on Hawaii. It's real sharp. There's no limits on their props. I mean, they have the largest menu. So enjoy that when you go there.
Can't wait.
Also, the podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. Everybody loves PrizePicks, where you can project more or less. You make your picks, and you can win 5 to 10 extra money. Our code is ROTOPOD, ROTOPOD. We paid our bills right there, and we're just going to take a short break for our listening audience, YouTube audience. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We are back with the RotoWire Dynasty podcast. I'm Alan Seslowsky, along with Thor Nystrom, Fantasy Pros. Yes, that Thor Nystrom. And we are about to reveal another sleeper for you. Now, you talked about Luke McCaffrey, okay? He's a little bit of a polarizing guy, and, I've kind of shoved him off because it's easy to say, oh, it's just, CMC's brother or, whatever. But there's some real upside here in the situation he landed in. Tell us why we should be taking McCaffrey in the 3rd round, even ahead of Malachi Corley, as you suggested.
Yeah. So for me, McCaffrey, he was the dude I was in the wide receivers, this class for guys that were projected to go later, the guy that I was banging the drum for the entire process. And I think this is a tremendous landing spot for him for reasons I'll explain in a second. I think he got overlooked for, number one, the reason that you said, oh, it's just Christian's little brother. And then the other one was Luke McCaffrey. I don't know if people know this or remember this. He was a failed quarterback. He went into college as this ballyhooed 4-star, failed at Nebraska, he tried to go to Louisville. So he was transferring around. Then he goes to Rice. And finally, whether it was the coaching staff that convinced him or Luke McCaffrey just deciding switches to wide receiver. The 2 years that he was at Rice, he was dominant. Now, you have to give the contextual thing, the same thing I said for Corley on the other side. Conference USA stinks. So I will say that.
But if it's going to stink, you better dominate.
You better dominate. And he absolutely dominated. And the things to keep in mind with this, they were his first 2 years playing wide receiver. So number one, Luke McCaffrey. And then the other thing is the way he was winning was unique. And this wasn't talked about enough during the process. I talked about the contested catch thing with Corley a little bit ago. McCaffrey was 17 for 28 in contested situations last year, and he goes downfield. He wins downfield. He has awesome hands. I think he only had a couple. Let's see. He only had 3 drops on 120 targets last year. Again, only his second year playing wide receiver. And the predominant usage was downfield because Rice realized we can just lollipop it up to him. Doesn't matter even if he's double covered. He tilts, I was talking before about, it's like the idea of the 50-50 ball. Luke McCaffrey tilts the odds to the offensive side. He's 6'2",
198.
Almost 200 pounds. Right. And then was 94 percentile athlete, by Raz with the composite. And the really cool thing about his tape, it's the hands in conjunction with the concentration. He knows how to get downtown. Like the moves off the line, his development as far as the release package is really good. So they're not funneling him where they want him to go. McCaffrey's getting the clean release, gets into the route quickly. Then when he gets downfield, it's the hands in conjunction with the concentration. I saw multiple times where a ball was fit in between 2 defenders. These situations where a lot of receivers, even if it gets there, it's a really difficult. You're in really congested quarters. If the ball hits that kid on the hands, he's bringing it in. So his hands are that good. It doesn't really matter what the situation is. Also, another thing with his tape.
I just want. How does his game line up with Jayden Daniels?
Yeah. So where this gets really interesting is McCaffrey's best thing is winning downfield. Jayden Daniels' best thing as a thrower is lollipopping the ball downfield. And by the way, we predominantly talked about that with Brian Thomas. You'll recall the first-round receiver at Jacksonville, where it was, 75, 80% of his usage was the downtown stuff. Didn't talk about it as much with Malik Neighbors. You know what the number one route that Malik Neighbors ran last year? It was the slot fade. So even out of the slot, that's Jayden Daniels' game because Jayden Daniels presents a spacing problem for the defense. It's why I comped him to Randall Cunningham. He can beat you downfield because he has that feathery rainbow ball down there, and then he's the awesome scrambler. So it's like it forces the defense, the 2 safeties back. Now you can't keep a spy on Jayden Daniels, but he needs receivers that can win down there. Luke McCaffrey absolutely can win down there, whether he's deployed out of the slot or whether he's deployed out wide. Luke McCaffrey going to win downfield, and that is Jayden Daniels' prerogative.
So this was a strategic pick by the Commanders then, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. He just goes so well with Jayden Daniels' game.
Right. That's how you could tell this is a new regime in Washington because they're not just picking, they're not just trading all over the place. They're picking puzzle pieces that fit together. All right. I think that's a good piece of actionable takeaway right here with the Luke McCaffrey stuff. I want to switch over to, are you closed on him, McCaffrey?
Yeah,
You're good. Okay. Wow. Okay. So why do you think other teams didn't see it, that he lasted that long in the draft, or just this is the appropriate measuring the downside of, his risk as well?
I think Washington jumped the line. Luke McCaffrey was going to go right away, in my opinion, on Saturday. But I think most teams that were interested in him were probably earmarking that middle of round 4, early round 4, and Washington just beat him to the punch. Like I said, on my board, I had Luke McCaffrey 107 overall. Washington took him 100th overall. and with the last pick in the third round. I think that Washington knew if we want him, we need to pop him right here. He would have gone, early on in the third round. The Broncos, they probably still take Franklin just because of the Bo Nix thing and yada, yada. But you had the Patriots taking Javon Baker a little bit later. The Ravens taking Tez Walker, both there early in the fourth round. I think McCaffrey ends up going somewhere in those first 12 picks of the fourth round if Washington didn't do that. So they basically just hopped the line for him.
Do any of these non-first round quarterbacks qualify as a sleeper? I play in a ton of Superflex leagues. You know how popular Superflex is at this point. So when you're talking about Rattler, Jordan Travis, Leary, even Pratt, I mean, obviously these guys are not slated to start. They're only break glass in case of emergency. But an emerging strategy in Dynasty Superflex leagues, Thor, is to put these guys on your bench. And when you're drafting them in the fourth round of our Superflex rookie drafts, and if somebody needs a quarterback, if these guys show anything, you could certainly get at least your money back plus more. So of those, Rattler, Travis, Pratt, Leary, which one of them do you think has the best fantasy football upside?
Rattler for sure. Rattler's the one who has a ceiling where he could actually be an NFL starter. Now, he has a big band of outcomes, right? Because he was the 5-star recruit who came in, who was awesome as a redshirt freshman. People might forget this too. After Spencer Rattler's redshirt freshman season, everyone in the 2 early mock drafts right after the draft, they had Spencer Rattler as the first pick in the next class. But he had to get through his 3rd season on campus. That's when Caleb Williams arrived. And of course, then, Lincoln and Caleb Williams end up going to USC, and Rattler gets sent along his way to South Carolina. The fit with Rattler in South Carolina was bad from an on-field perspective because South Carolina had the worst Power 5 offensive line and one of the worst pass blocking offensive lines in all of America and all of the FBS in both of his seasons. And why that particularly matters for Rattler, he's analogous more to like a Bryce Young just in terms of the way that they play, where it's a little bit extending the play. They don't want to throw the ball right away. They don't want those pre-delineated reads. They would have been less comfortable like in an Oregon system, like the Bo Nix thing with you get the answer right away and then you're just throwing the ball right away to the close to the line of scrimmage. Rattler likes to do the same thing that Young does, where he's sort of maneuvering around out of shotgun. He likes the field spread and then throwing 2.5, 3 seconds after the snap. That was a terrible fit behind that South Carolina offensive line because there was immediate penetration every time. He didn't start to figure it out until his end of the first season there. And then this past season, they had no talent because MarShawn, Lloyd had left. Who was the other dude? The other receivers they had left. It was basically Xavier Legette or Pray for Rain on South Carolina. So,
well, let me ask you this:
go one way or the other.
Under over a half a start, not on injury in New Orleans this year. Spencer Rattler, under over a half a start. Meaning, do you think he'll start a game based on performance or lack of for Derek Carr in 24?
I don't. I think in 24, I think it would have to be injury related for him to I don't see. It would have to be pretty disastrous for New Orleans to do the benching of Carr, because I would need his contract in front of me. But don't they have to pay him for one more year?
I'm just saying, like, they get off to a 3-4 start. Carr has the 3 interception game. The crowd is yelling for Spencer Rattler. You think they stick with Carr? I'm not even saying like it's sometimes they, I guess I'm just saying, if Rattler shows something in, does he have that kind of upside, or is it like, hey, wait a couple years and eventually he'll have a chance to compete for the starting job once they move on? Is that more what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think more like 2025 and beyond.
That's fair.
You got to get Rattler back to not like, again, with the immediate penetration that he was seeing in South Carolina, you sort of have to have like I don't want to say redshirt season for him, but like a sort of a get right season with his head as far as that. He played super admirably at South Carolina. One other thing that I'll say about him, people remember that show he did where he came off as the immature kid coming out of high school. Mm-hmm. I talked to Spencer Rattler down at the Senior Bowl, and anyone that talks to him, they'll tell you the exact same thing that I'm about to. That kid's matured quite a bit, and it's because he was humbled. He was humble getting kicked out of Oklahoma. Then he goes down to South Carolina. Now all of a sudden he's on the low end of the SEC, and there's these dominant defensive fronts, and he was running for his life some of the times. he's actually a super nice, humble kid now.
Cool. That happens. We just talked about it. People mature, right?
People mature. Yeah, exactly.
In my case, I think I'm getting less mature, though. I really do. Real quick lightning round here. Ben Sinnott, is he going to be he's a very popular pick in the second round of any sort of premium league in our rookie drafts. Is he the real deal, Ben Sinnott? Did he catch you by surprise, or this is what you were expecting for him to be in, to have the draft to be TE2 in the tight end class?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his game. He was good. He was TE2 on my board as well. And I comped him to a guy that I banged the drum for last process.
And I know it's Sinnott, by the way. I already see people saying Sin it in the comments. Okay, I know it's Sinnott, Sinnott. I get it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. But it's a tough one. Like in college, I would refer to him as the other pronunciation, and sometimes
it's the Achan. Well, it's a year from now we'll all be saying, because we'll hear him catch touchdowns on the TV, and they'll say Ben Sinnott, so it'll be in our head. But what were we calling Achan last summer? Or not you, but like what was everyone calling him? What was the mispronunciation?
Achan, right? Or
Achan, or Achan. It was Achan. That's what it was. I don't remember, but it happens. It happens.
It happens.
Yeah. It happens. So anyway, back to Ben Sinnott.
Yeah. So first of all, the kid's a really good blocker, and he can be deployed everywhere, but was plenty inline at Kansas State that, you can certainly play him there and Cliff Kingsbury's offense. That's what I expect. As a rookie, he has to work in with Mr. Ertz, right? They signed Zach Ertz, or they have Zach Ertz. So like it's you have that as the rookie, but like beyond that, I'm very bullish on his future. I also, for the opposite reasons of Luke McCaffrey, I think this pick stylistically made a lot of sense for Washington. We talk a lot about, like you mentioned with the quarterbacks, the 10 to 19 between the hashes, the money zone there in the NFL. We don't talk about that as much. Who wins there, who dominates there with the receivers and the tight ends. But I mentioned before, Jayden Daniels, they just didn't call. It's not that he can't pepper that. It's that LSU didn't call it. So it's sort of a black box in his evaluation. We know he's awesome downfield. We know he's awesome as a scrambler. How will he be on those anticipatory throws, testing the windows over the middle? You have to use that sector of the field in the NFL, because if the opponent knows that they don't have to defend it, that's how you can start to counteract the spacing issue I was talking about before that Jayden Daniels brings to the field. The point about Sinnott, he was one of the best in this class, catching the ball 10 to 19 yards down the field, between the hashes, over the middle of the field. He is awesome at that. He doesn't care about traffic around him. He doesn't care about taking a shot. And when he catches it, in garbage and whatever, it quickly converts to being a runner, and then turns into the berserker break in the tackles. And that's what reminded me of Laporta with him. The hands, the fluidity turning into the runner, and then the breaking the tackles after that. Again, he might not be the starter until year 2, but when he does, I think he is going to help Jayden Daniels as far as throwing over the middle. The big target there that is going to catch anything, pin guys to his back, anything you put on his hands, and then he's going to get you extra yards by breaking those tackles. I think he was picked in part to help Jayden Daniels with that transition to the NFL in that sector.
Yeah, it's an interesting take right there. How many more rookie tight ends is Zach Ertz going to block, right? Dallas Goedert, Trey McBride, and now, Ben Sinnott. I promised you I'd get you out of here. I can't not leave without asking about Jaylen Wright, MarShawn Lloyd. They're going at the end of the second round. Do you have a preference over those guys, given now that we know the landing spots? And give me your take on Jaylen Wright, Miami Dolphins, and MarShawn Lloyd, Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I had Wright ranked higher, and Wright, that was a situation where so I knew, I had heard during the process that the Dolphins, they were on Wright more than any other team. They were all over Jaylen Wright during the pre-draft process. And so I sort of had time to think about the fit there. I know that fantasy owners hate it as far as, he got to team up with the other speedster, but I actually talked myself into that fit there. You're going to have
Mostert is going to be gone, presumably in a year, maybe, to the
Correct.
most. Yeah, he's 32 years old.
Yeah. So like what Wright is going to do right from the get is he's going to be the passing down guy, right? You have to, how do we pronounce it? Achane?
I think you said it right. Devon
Okay,
Achane. Achane.
Achane. Okay. Because I always pronounce it Achane, and
that's fine.
When he was at A&M, but yeah.
I mean, like I said, I've heard it so many different ways, and and I think every pronunciation's wrong. So, I mean, I think Achane, as far as I know.
But here's my deal with Jaylen Wright is with Achane, he's going to get the early down stuff, but you have to mitigate his touches, or as Miami found out last year, he's going to end up getting injured. So you have to keep it 12 or less per game. That includes special teams. That includes catching the ball. 12 or less is sort of the sweet spot for him. That's with Achane, where you still have the possibility of the dingers that he brings to the field. He still concerns defensive with the speed, but he just doesn't have the body to touch the ball 20 times over the long run of the season. If you want him healthy and active at the end of the season and into the playoffs, Jaylen Wright was brought in to mitigate those touches. He's going to be on the field on the passing downs. Jaylen Wright's a really, really good receiver. He also obviously is the burner with the 4.3 wheels. And what people about his game, he's a very, very good pass blocker. Was not the
Jaylen Wright is a good pass blocker.
Jaylen Wright is a very good pass blocker.
Ooh, okay.
The best one in this class was Kamani Vidal, who's my favorite sleeper, running back, for that. But Jaylen Wright, I would be in the top 5 as far as pass blockers. So he's going to take the passing down work. He is also incredible insurance against the Achane injury, whenever that crops
up. Or the Mostert injury. They both got hurt last year.
Yeah, in Mostert, he's going to, mix and match in and give both the guys the blows. But that's how I expect it to go down initially. And then, of course, if Achane goes down, I think Wright goes right into that spot. And then Mostert stays where he is. And then you sort of do it like that. But early on in Wright's career, he was only the starter at Tennessee for 1 year. And it was that gimmicky offense that Hypo runs where you spread the field super wide. So he got to face some of the thinner boxes. There are some similarities in what Miami tries to do with the speed, get people out of the box, and then you do the same thing. You're trying to just find that crease down the field. We got a home run hitter back here. So, but you have to teach Jaylen Wright some of the different running concepts, some of the feel, some of the decision-making behind the line as a runner, just because he's early on his development with that. He had less touches than most of these guys in this class with that. But if he can learn that stuff, well, I know he's going to give you the passing down stuff. If he can learn the other stuff, that's where you get the two-way guy. And I think his potential is very, very high. I hated the landing spot for MarShawn Lloyd. I am a fan of
why do you hate it? Because he's in number 2, or you think he's like a number 3 with AJ Dillon still there? Why don't you like it?
Yeah, it's a quagmire. Like initially, it's going to be a lot as a rookie to overcome both Jacobs and Dillon to get on the field. Now, the Jacobs contract, I think that is structured where they could potentially get out of it after the year. Yeah. So I think Lloyd is your guy for Dynasty, not for
you're not taking him in best ball. You're not taking him, and maybe he'll be like the week 8 hot waiver wire guy if Jacobs misses a week or 2.
For sure. Yeah. Right. And that's how I would play that one. Like, again, in Dynasty drafts, I think MarShawn Lloyd's probably the starter in Green Bay 2025. Like, he's a talented guy. But the thing with MarShawn Lloyd that people need to keep in mind that caps his fantasy ceiling, especially if you're in a PPR league, MarShawn Lloyd's never played in passing downs his entire career. At either of the 2 USCs, he was always the early down runner guy. Now, I will say at the Senior Bowl, he did show to be a pretty solid route runner when compared against the other runners that were there. He certainly caught everything that I saw, but it needs to be mentioned because you had, when he was at South Carolina, then when he was at Southern California, the 2 USCs, they didn't use him like that. He's a horrific pass blocker. So you're not going to do that with him. And then the receiving thing, we only saw it acquit itself well when we were down there in Mobile, and he gets nicked up a lot. So I think in the NFL, you will use him as the early down guy, but the way that you'll try to mitigate MarShawn Lloyd getting nicked up, which, again, we saw a lot in college, it's probably going to be even more the case in the NFL, is by giving him that passing down complement once you get Jacobs out of there. Once you get Dillon out of there, you reconstitute that thing. If you get him like a Dillon Lobby, from this class, or,
I was thinking more of, Yeah, I was thinking more of like a veteran, like whoever the next Austin Eckler, that stage of their career guy is. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What's the favorite part? What's your favorite part of your job over at Fantasy Pros? What do you like doing the most?
Did I get paid to watch football and talk about football? Like it's just incredible. Like this is what I wanted to do since I was a kid. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity. And I mean that's what it is. Like behind me there on the other side of the fireplace, I got a projector in the middle, and then I have two. I don't know if you can see.
I could. Look. Oh, there it is.
TV
yeah,
over there,
the hanger right there.
Over here, other TV over there, and then in the middle, it's the projector. I go 3 wide at least during college football Saturdays. I go 3 wide during MACtion when we have the 3 MAC games on. Like
I love when you're using. I love that you're using football formations to talk about your TV setup too. 3 wide. Yeah, I go. Wishbone with my my stuff, going old school like that. You follow Thor as I do. Thor KU, THORKU as I do. I mean. I think probably the best you're on the Mount Rushmore of college and of rookie analysis. I enjoy it. You make it entertaining. You make it digestible, right? That's what I like about it. You're using numbers, Thor. You like how I'm telling you what you do, using numbers, but I like that you make it digestible, and your passion for your craft is pretty obvious. So I appreciate that you're generous with your time coming on our podcast over here. I know the audience has loved it. You've been one of the guys that we get one of the most requests for, and I only feel silly that I've been doing this podcast for a few years, and this is the first time. I'm glad we've met, and thank you again for doing it.
Yeah, I super duper enjoyed this. That's very kind of your audience, and I appreciated talking to you today. And yeah, that stuff's super important to me, like because I feel like if you exclude people with the language that you talk about it in, if you're using these highfalutin terms to show people how smart you are and how much you know about schematics and stuff like this, you exclude a portion of the audience, and that's not what this is about. Like,
you got it, baby. You got it.
You have to do it that way, and it's not dumbing down, right? It just So I appreciate that compliment. It's something I think about for sure.
Sure. So Thor didn't come here for his health. He loves talking about football, but he is here to promote some of his work. So we're going to give him an opportunity right here. What's the one thing you want people to pay attention to right now? Because your main part of your season is done. You're in a little bit of downtime. So what do you want people to pay attention to that you're working on right now?
Well, I'm not working on anything right now because work gave me a month off after the draft. So
I'm calling Fantasy Pros. All right, so you're on hiatus. Okay, what's something
I'm on hiatus right now? But the last thing I did for the draft, I do UDFA class rankings. If anyone out there in the audience hasn't seen those, you can check. I might be the only guy that does that. I don't know if anyone has started to do it recently, but you can check that out at Fantasy Pros. I also do my last 2 columns there, or the last column.
Wait, who's your number 1 UDFA?
In the class, my number 1 was Fabian Lovett, was like the player, and then the top 2 classes were the Chiefs and the Jets this year. But it's one of my favorite things to go through all the different classes and then rank them qualitatively 1 through 32. It's a super important part of the draft process. People don't realize 20 to 25 snaps every single year in the NFL are taken by UDFAs. UDFAs give the NFL more value than the 6th, 7th round combined. You'd have to cleave off part of the 5th round in order to get equivalent there. So it's an important thing, and that's why I love doing that. And then my last column was Draft Hall. I call it Draft Hall rankings, where I have all these other different metrics that I do for the draft. Your talent acquired, that I do it by a point system. The draft equity that you use to acquire that talent, and then the ROI that you got on your picks. So I end up stacking it like that. And in the Hall column, I do it with the draft class combined with the UDFA class.
Yeah. All right, Thor. I love it, man. I'll be following along as I always do. And I just want to remind everyone that you can get behind RotoWire's paywall for free right now. Just go to rotowire.com/pod, rotowire.com/pod. Put in your email, paywall unlocks. Other than that, everybody, we'll see you next week with another Dynasty Fantasy